with bathroom under renovation. Nanny bathed child with hose. Gabriella Johnson held the hose firmly as the stream of fresh water fell over little Ethan, who wouldn't stop laughing. The July afternoon sun beat down hard that Sunday in Los Angeles, and after a whole afternoon playing in the dirt-filled garden, the 3-year-old boy was dirty from head to toe. The ensuite bathroom had been under renovation for almost 3 weeks. What was supposed to be a quick job turned into a nightmare when they discovered they needed to redo all the plumbing. The responsible construction company couldn't find the right parts, and meanwhile, the family improvised using the guest bathroom or the master bathroom. "Auntie Gabby, more water," shouted Ethan, jumping barefoot on the wet grass. Gabriella smiled, adjusting the white apron over the navy blue uniform she wore. That boy had been her life for almost 4 years. Since he was born, she had been there for the first steps, the first words, the feverish nights. She cared for him as if he were her own grandson. "Easy, my love. Let Auntie soap you up properly," she said, picking up the liquid soap she had brought in a plastic container. It was the 3rd time that week she had bathed the boy there in the garden. With the bathroom under renovation, and Ethan always coming back dirty from playing, it ended up becoming a practical solution. The boy loved it, found it fun, different, and Gabriella did everything with such affection that she turned that moment into something special. She had lined part of the garden with clean towels, prepared everything carefully. Warm water from the hose that had been in the sun, soap, shampoo, a fluffy towel waiting on a nearby bench. Everything thought out in the smallest details so Ethan wouldn't experience any discomfort. "Now close your little eyes while Auntie washes your hair," asked Gabriella, with that sweet voice she always used with him. Ethan obeyed, confident, while she carefully applied the shampoo. He hummed a song she herself had taught him about a little fish swimming in the sea. He was a happy, healthy boy, full of life. On the other side of the garden, on the porch overlooking that area, stood Jonathan Miller. The 42-year-old businessman had returned early from his business meeting and found that scene. His face began to turn red, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Jonathan owned one of the largest import-export companies in Los Angeles. He came from a traditional family, raised with a silver spoon, accustomed to a certain standard of living that he considered non-negotiable. And that scene, in his view, was a humiliation. "What is this nonsense?" he shouted, descending the porch steps with heavy footsteps. Gabriella was startled, almost dropping the hose. Ethan opened his eyes, still with soap in his hair, confused by his father's tone of voice. "Mr. Jonathan, I was just—" began Gabriella, her voice trembling. "You're bathing my son with a hose, like he's a dog?" he interrupted, his voice loud, cutting. "In the garden? For everyone to see?" "Daddy, we're playing," said Ethan, not understanding what was happening. "Shut up, Ethan!" Jonathan scolded his son with a harshness that made the boy start crying. Gabriella tried to explain, the words tumbling out. She talked about the bathroom under renovation, about how she did this with all care, with warm water, with proper child products. But Jonathan didn't want to hear it. "This is unacceptable," he practically shouted. "What will the neighbors think? What will anyone passing by think of my family?" "Sir, please, I was just trying to keep Ethan clean. He played in the dirt and—" "I don't want to know," Jonathan interrupted her again. "You're fired. Get your things and get out of my house now." The silence that followed was heavy. Gabriella felt her legs wobble. Ethan was crying, still with soap in his hair, not understanding why his father was so angry, why Auntie Gabby looked so scared. "Please, Mr. Jonathan—" Gabriella tried once more, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I've taken care of Ethan since he was a baby. I said, get out, now," he ordered, pointing toward the exit. Gabriella picked up Ethan, even though he was still soapy and wet, and hugged him tight. The boy clung to her, crying, begging her not to leave, but Jonathan tore the child from her arms. "Ethan, you will take your bath inside," he said, carrying the boy who kicked and cried even louder. Gabriella stood there, her apron wet, her hands trembling. 4 years. 4 years caring for that boy as if he were her own blood. And now she was being sent away for trying to keep him clean and happy. She entered the house, went up to the small room she occupied in the back. It was a simple space, but one where she had built a home over those years. Pictures of Ethan everywhere, drawings he made for her. A small sweater he wore during his first winter that she asked to keep as a memento. Tears fell non-stop as she packed her things into an old suitcase. Every object was a memory, every piece of clothing, every notebook where she wrote down the recipes Ethan liked, every toy she had bought with her own salary to see the boy smile. From downstairs, she could still hear Ethan crying, calling for her. He screamed, "Auntie Gabby, Auntie Gabby," in a way that broke her heart. But Jonathan wouldn't relent. She heard the businessman repeating that she wouldn't come back, that the boy should stop crying. Gabriella came down with her suitcase, her legs heavy. She passed through the kitchen, where she had prepared so many baby foods, so many soups, so many snacks. She passed through the living room where she played hide-and-seek with Ethan in the evenings. Every corner of that house held a piece of her. At the exit door, she heard hurried footsteps. Ethan had escaped from his father and was running toward her, barefoot, still wet. "Don't go, Auntie Gabby," he cried, throwing himself at her legs. Gabriella knelt, hugged the boy for the last time. She kissed his forehead, breathed in the scent of shampoo in his damp hair. "Auntie loves you so much, my love. So much," she said. Her voice choked. "You're going to be okay, all right?" "I don't want you to go," Ethan yelled, clinging to her tightly. Jonathan appeared, separated the two again. He picked up Ethan as the boy struggled, crying desperately. Gabriella took her suitcase and left, each step taking an eternity. The door closed behind her, but she could still hear Ethan's screams from the other side. The street was empty. The sun was still shining brightly as if nothing had happened, as if her world hadn't just collapsed. Gabriella walked to the bus stop, the suitcase heavy, her heart even heavier. On the other side of the high wall surrounding the Miller mansion, a 73-year-old woman had witnessed everything. Mrs. Margaret had lived in the neighboring house for over 40 years. That afternoon she was in her garden photographing her roses when she heard the screams. Curious by nature, she had approached and seen the whole scene. The nanny bathing the boy with such affection, the businessman arriving furious, the cruel dismissal. Mrs. Margaret had even taken a few pictures of the moment, not out of malice, but because she had the camera in her hand and her instinct to record took over. Now, alone in her garden, she looked at the images on her digital camera's screen. There was something in those photos that bothered her, the expression of pure love on the nanny's face as she cared for the child, the boy's genuine smile, and then the pain, the tears, the desperation. "That man doesn't know what he just did," murmured Mrs. Margaret, shaking her head. Inside the Miller mansion, Ethan wouldn't stop crying. Jonathan tried to give him a bath in the guest bathroom shower, but the boy refused to cooperate. He cried, screamed Gabriella's name, and struggled. "Ethan, stop that!" Jonathan was losing his patience. "You need to take a bath." "I want Auntie Gabby," the boy screamed between sobs. "Where's Auntie Gabby?" "She's gone and she's not coming back," Jonathan replied, harsher than he intended. "Now you'll have to get used to it." But Ethan didn't get used to it. He spent the whole night crying, refusing food, refusing to sleep. Jonathan didn't know what to do anymore. He had never been alone with his son for so long. It had always been Gabriella who took care of everything. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a fever. Jonathan took his temperature and saw it was 101 degrees. He tried to give him medicine, but the boy spat it out, turned his face away and cried, "Ethan, you need to take the medicine," he insisted, but without the gentle touch that Gabriella used. "I want Auntie Gabby," was all the boy repeated, growing weaker. Jonathan called Jennifer, his wife, who had been in Washington, D.C. for 5 days due to work. She was a lawyer, a partner at a large firm, and was finalizing an important case in the capital. "Jennifer, you need to come back," he said on the phone, trying to stay calm. "Ethan is not feeling well." "Not feeling well how?" she asked, worried. "He has a fever, won't eat, won't stop crying." "And Gabriella? Did she call the pediatrician?" Jonathan paused. He hadn't told his wife about the firing. "Gabriella, she's not here anymore." "What do you mean she's not there? Where did she go? I fired her yesterday." The silence on the other end of the line was icy. "You did what?" Jennifer's voice rose. I caught her giving Ethan a bath with a hose in the garden, as if he were... Jonathan began to justify. You fired Gabriella, the woman who has taken care of our son since he was born? Jennifer couldn't believe it. Jonathan, have you lost your mind? It was humiliating, Jennifer. The neighbors could see anyone passing by on the street. You're the one who's humiliating, she shouted. The bathroom is under renovation. The woman was taking care of our son, and you fired her out of pure prejudice. It wasn't prejudice, it was... Yes, it was, Jennifer interrupted him. And now Ethan is sick and I have to drop everything here to come back because you're incapable of taking care of your own son. She hung up on him. Jonathan stared at the phone, feeling anger mixed with something he didn't want to admit was guilt. Ethan continued crying in the room, calling for Gabriella. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Jennifer arrived home that same night. She was exhausted from the trip, but her concern for Ethan spoke louder. She found her husband on the living room sofa, visibly drained, and Ethan sleeping in his lap after hours of crying. Let me see him, she said, carefully taking their son from Jonathan's lap. Ethan was warm, his little face swollen from so much crying. Jennifer took him to the room and put him in bed. She wet a towel with cold water and placed it on his forehead. Mommy? Ethan opened his eyes, confused. Hi, my love. Mummy's back, she said, stroking his hair. Where's Auntie Gabby? Was his first question. Jennifer felt her heart tighten. She looked at Jonathan, who was standing in the doorway, and the anger returned with force. Auntie Gabby had to travel, sweetie, she lied, not knowing how to explain to a 3-year-old. But Mommy is here now. I want Auntie Gabby, Ethan started crying again. I want Auntie Gabby. Jennifer tried to calm him down, but she couldn't. She offered water, food, toys. Nothing worked. The boy only wanted Gabriella. Do you see what you've done? She said to Jonathan, trying to keep her voice low so as not to scare Ethan even more. You destroyed his stability reference. I didn't think he would react like this. Jonathan defended himself, but his voice came out without conviction. She had been taking care of him since he was a baby, Jonathan. She was more present in his life than both of us. Jennifer was furious. And you sent her away because you decided that a hose bath was humiliating? For whom? For your ego? Jonathan didn't answer. He left the room and went to the office, closing the door. He sat in the leather armchair, looking at the walls full of diplomas and business awards. But none of that made him feel any less empty at that moment. Jennifer stayed up all night with Ethan. The boy had nightmares, woke up crying, calling for Gabriella. By morning, the fever had risen to 101.3. She called the pediatrician, who asked them to bring the boy to the office. You can stay here taking care of the house, Jennifer said to Jonathan, her tone sharp. I'll take Ethan alone. In Dr. Reynolds' office, the pediatrician who had been following Ethan since birth, the doctor examined the boy carefully. He listened to his lungs, checked his throat, measured his blood pressure. Physically, I don't see anything serious, he told Jennifer. The fever seems to be more emotional than physical. Emotional? She asked. Young children can develop physical symptoms in response to emotional trauma, the doctor explained. Did something different happen at home in the last few days? Jennifer told him about Gabriella's dismissal. Dr. Reynolds shook his head, concerned. Was Gabriella his primary caregiver? Yes, since he was born. Then, for him, it was like losing a mother. The doctor spoke seriously. Children this age don't understand concepts like dismissal or work. They only know that a person they loved suddenly disappeared. What do I do? Jennifer asked, feeling guilt tighten her chest. Ideally, try to bring Gabriella back at least for a proper farewell, suggested Dr. Reynolds. But if that's not possible, you'll need patience and a lot of affection. And maybe consider an evaluation with a child psychologist. Jennifer returned home with Ethan, who remained apathetic, not wanting to play. She told Jonathan what the doctor had said. Psychologist? Jonathan reacted. He's 3 years old. And he's traumatized, Jennifer replied, all because of your impulsive decision. I'll hire another nanny, he said. A better one, someone more qualified. You didn't understand anything, did you? Jennifer was incredulous. It's not about qualifications. It's about bonding. It's about love. Gabriella loved Ethan, and he loves her. In the following days, Jonathan contacted a luxury nanny agency. He asked for someone extremely qualified, with a background in pedagogy, impeccable references. And he asked for someone different from Gabriella, someone who represented the standard he thought appropriate for the family. The agency sent Audrey Fontaine, a 35-year-old French woman who had worked with wealthy families in Paris before coming to the United States. She spoke 4 languages, had a master's in early childhood education, and charged 3 times more than Gabriella. Audrey arrived in a taxi, dressed impeccably, with an expensive brand-name suitcase. Jonathan received her with satisfaction, thinking he had solved the problem. "This is the house and this is Ethan," he introduced, pointing to the boy who was sitting on the sofa, hugging a teddy bear that Gabriella had given him. "Hello, Ethan," Audrey said with a professional smile. Ethan looked at her and hid his face behind the teddy bear. He said nothing. "He's a little shy," Jonathan tried to justify. "But you'll get along soon." Audrey tried to approach, but Ethan got up and ran to his room, slamming the door. Jennifer, who was watching everything from the kitchen, shook her head. "He'll get used to it," Jonathan insisted, more to himself than to the others. But Ethan never got used to it. In the first few days, he refused to speak with Audrey. When she tried to feed him, he turned his face away. When she wanted to play, he ran off. The only thing the boy did was cry and ask for Auntie Gabby. Audrey, despite all her training and experience, couldn't form a connection with Ethan. She was efficient, followed all the protocols, but something essential was missing. The genuine affection that Gabriella had was absent. "Mr. Miller," Audrey called Jonathan for a private conversation after a week. "We need to talk about Ethan." "Hasn't he adjusted yet?" Jonathan asked, starting to truly worry. "It's not just that," Audrey spoke with professional seriousness. "This child is showing signs of trauma. He has developed an aversion to baths, isn't eating properly, isn't sleeping well. He's regressing in skills he had already developed. He's wetting the bed again, having difficulty speaking." "But what can I do?" Jonathan asked, lost. "Sir, with all due respect, this child needs therapy, and he needs the person he's asking for. Who is this Gabriella he keeps calling for?" Jonathan told the story, and Audrey listened carefully. When he finished, she sighed. "Mr. Miller, I've worked with many families around the world. I've seen everything," she said. "But rarely have I seen a child so attached to someone. This Gabriella clearly formed a very strong bond with Ethan. She wasn't just a nanny to him, she was a mother figure." "But he has a mother," Jonathan defended. "And where was this mother most of the time?" Audrey asked. Not accusatory, just objective. "Because what I see is a child who spent the first 3 years of his life being cared for mainly by this woman, and suddenly she disappeared, without any explanation he could understand." Audrey's words echoed in Jonathan's head in the following days. He began to notice things he had never seen before. The drawings Ethan made were always of him with Gabriella. His favorite toys were the ones she had given him. The songs he sang were the ones she taught him. Jennifer scheduled an appointment with child psychologist Dr. Sarah Thompson. The first session was observation. The doctor asked Ethan to play while she spoke with the parents. "Tell me about Ethan's routine before this change," Dr. Sarah requested. Jennifer explained. She woke up early for work. Jonathan did too. It was Gabriella who woke Ethan, prepared his breakfast, dressed him, played with him. Jennifer usually returned after he was already asleep. Jonathan sometimes arrived earlier, but spent little time with his son. "And on weekends?" "Jonathan and I tried to spend time with him," Jennifer answered. "But there was also work to do, things to take care of. Gabriella was usually around." "So essentially, Gabriella was the most constant figure in his life," the psychologist concluded. Jennifer and Jonathan exchanged glances. They had never thought of it that way. "She wasn't just an employee," Dr. Sarah continued. "To Ethan, she was the person who made him feel safe, the person who was always there. And that person disappeared overnight without a goodbye, without a proper explanation." "But he's only 3 years old," Jonathan said. "He'll forget, won't he?" "Mr. Miller, early childhood trauma can last a lifetime," The psychologist spoke kindly but firmly. "Especially when it involves the sudden loss of an attachment figure. I can't force anyone to do anything, but my professional advice would be, if there's any way to bring this woman back, at least temporarily, it would be best for Ethan." Jonathan left that office a changed man. For the first time, I was truly considering that maybe I had made a mistake, a big one. But pride still spoke loudly. How could I admit I was wrong? How could I go looking for Gabriella and ask her to come back? Meanwhile, across town, Gabriella was trying to rebuild her life. She had gone back to her sister Vanessa's house, in a simple neighborhood on the north side of Los Angeles. She slept on the small living room sofa, sharing the space with her 2 teenage nephews. "You'll find another job soon," Vanessa tried to cheer her up. "With your experience, any family would be lucky to have you." But Gabriella could barely get out of bed. She spent her days looking at pictures of Ethan on her phone, the hundreds of photos she had taken over those 4 years, the first smile, the first tooth, the first step, all stored there, the memories of a life that had been suddenly ripped away from her. "I can't, Vanessa," she cried. "I raised that boy. He's like a grandson to me, and now I don't even know if he's okay, if he's eating, if he's sleeping." "You could try talking to the boss," Vanessa suggested. "After the way I was treated?" Gabriella shook her head. "No, I have my dignity." But at night, when everyone was asleep, Gabriella would take her phone and look at the Miller's home number. She would even dial but hang up before the call connected. The longing for Ethan was physical. It hurt her chest, took her breath away. But wounded pride and the humiliation she felt kept her from trying to contact them. Almost 3 weeks passed like this, until Vanessa came home with some news. "Sis, remember Mrs. Gladys, the one who runs the community daycare over there in the village?" "I remember," Gabriella replied, without much interest. "She needs help. One of the caregivers left and she's desperate. I told her about you and she wants to meet you." Gabriella had no energy, but she knew she needed to work. She couldn't stay at her sister's house as a guest forever. The next day, she went to see the daycare. It was a simple place, a large house that had been adapted. The walls had colorful paintings done by the children themselves, donated toys scattered in the corners, nothing compared to the Miller's mansion. But there was something there that touched Gabriella. There was love. "Do you have experience with children?" Mrs. Gladys asked. She was a 68-year-old lady, black like Gabriella, with completely white hair and a warm smile. "Yes, I worked for 4 years taking care of a child," Gabriella replied. "Why did you leave?" Gabriella hesitated, but ended up telling her everything. The hose bath, the bosses yelling, the humiliating dismissal. Mrs. Gladys listened in silence, shaking her head. "My dear, I know that story well," she said when Gabriella finished. "I spent my whole life working in family homes. I raised 5 children alone. They all studied. They all graduated. And you know where? In public university, because I had no money, but I had love and dedication." "You must be very proud," Gabriella commented. "I am. My oldest is an engineer, the middle one is a teacher, the third is a nurse, the fourth works at a bank, and the youngest is finishing law school," Mrs. Gladys recounted with satisfaction. "But you know what I learned? That it doesn't matter where we work, in a mansion or a shack. What matters is the heart we put into what we do." Mrs. Gladys offered her the job. The salary was less than what Gabriella earned at the Miller's house, but she accepted. She needed something to occupy her mind, to fill the void Ethan had left. On the first day at the daycare, Gabriella was introduced to the 15 children who attended the place. They were children of parents who worked all day, most in difficult financial situations. Children from 2 to 6 years old, all needing attention, affection, care. "Auntie Gabriella," a 4-year-old girl ran to her as soon as she was introduced. "Are you going to play with us?" "Yes, my love," Gabriella Johnson replied, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a genuine smile appear on her face. Those children needed her. They didn't have the expensive toys that Ethan had. They didn't live in mansions, but they were children. Innocent, affectionate, full of life. And Gabriella discovered she had a lot of love to give. Love that had been bottled up, that needed a place to go. She began transforming the daycare's routine. She invented educational games using recycled materials. She told stories that the children loved. She taught songs, drew pictures with them. Each child had a problem, a need, and Gabriella was getting to know all of them little by little. There was little Emily, who was only 3 years old and very shy because her father had left. There was Michael, 5 years old, who was hyperactive and no one could calm him down. There was Lily Grace, 4 years old, who had speech problems and would get frustrated. There was William, 6 years old, who was very smart but had no one at home to help him with his homework. Gabriella dedicated herself to each of them. With Emily, she had patience, earning her trust gradually. With Michael, she invented games that used his energy productively. With Lily Grace, she did speech exercises disguised as play. With William, she set aside time after daycare to help him with his assignments. "You have a gift," Mrs. Gladys told her after 2 weeks. "The children already love you, and the parents are talking about the changes they're seeing in their kids." Gabriella felt she was starting to heal. The pain for Ethan was still there, a wound that wouldn't close, but at least now she had a purpose again. She had children who needed her, who waited for her every day. Among the mothers dropping off their children at the daycare was Rebecca Wilson. She worked as a freelance journalist, writing articles for websites and online magazines. Her daughter, little 3-year-old Sophia, had been attending the daycare for 6 months. Rebecca began noticing changes in Sophia after Gabriella arrived. The girl was more communicative, happier, singing new songs. One day, while picking up her daughter, Rebecca struck up a conversation with Gabriella. "My daughter won't stop talking about you," she commented, smiling. "Says Auntie Gabriella is the best aunt in the world." "She's such a sweetheart," Gabriella replied. "Very smart and affectionate." "Do you have children?" Rebecca asked. The question caught Gabriella off guard. She hesitated before answering. "No, I never could have any, but I've always cared for children as if they were my own," she said, her voice getting a bit choked up. Rebecca sensed there was a story there. In the following days, she kept starting conversations, and Gabriella ended up opening up. She told her about Ethan, about the 4 years caring for him, about the humiliating dismissal. "My God," Rebecca said when Gabriella finished. "And do you know how the boy is?" "I don't know. I haven't heard anything," Gabriella replied, tears welling up again. "And it kills me, not knowing if he's okay, if he's eating, if he's sleeping, if he remembers me." Rebecca became thoughtful. As a journalist, she had an instinct for stories that needed to be told, and that story touched her deeply. "Gabriella, would you mind if I wrote about this?" she asked. "Not using real names, but telling this story." "Why?" Gabriella asked. "Because it needs to be told. Because there are thousands of women like you who dedicate their lives to caring for other people's children, who love these children as if they were their own, but are treated as disposable," Rebecca explained. "Because people need to understand the value of those who care for their children." Gabriella thought for a moment, then agreed. Meanwhile, back in the upscale neighborhood where the Miller mansion was located, Mrs. Margaret continued following everything with interest. She had seen Gabriella leaving crying that Sunday, had seen the French nanny arriving days later, had seen Ethan crying at his bedroom window. Mrs. Margaret knew that family well. She had known Jonathan since he was a child, when he himself was a boy playing in that garden. She had watched him grow up, graduate, get married, have a son, and she had also seen how he turned into a cold person, obsessed with status and appearances. One afternoon, Mrs. Margaret was organizing photos on her computer when she came across the images from that Sunday. She enlarged each one, looking carefully. There was something in those photos that told a story. In the first photo, Gabriella was smiling at Ethan, holding the hose. The boy was completely happy, his eyes shining. In the second, Gabriella was soaping his hair with so much care, so much love. In the third, she was hugging him, and you could see on her face that it was much more than a job. And in the last photos, the tragedy. Jonathan shouting, Gabriella crying, Ethan desperate. Mrs. Margaret felt her heart tighten as she looked at those images. She decided she needed to do something. The following Sunday, when she saw Jonathan in the garden, she approached the wall that divided the two houses. "Jonathan," she called. He looked up, surprised. He rarely spoke with his neighbour. "Mrs. Margaret," he greeted, polite but cold. "I need to talk to you about something important," she said. "Now is not a good time." He tried to avoid it. "It's about what happened last Sunday," she insisted. "With that nanny and your son." Jonathan tensed up. Had the neighbour seen? Was she going to tell everyone? "That's none of your business," he replied, more rudely than he intended. "Maybe it's not," Mrs. Margaret agreed, "but I have something you should see." She disappeared for a moment and returned with a large envelope. She reached over the wall and handed it to Jonathan. "What is this?" he asked, suspicious. "Open it and see," she said simply. Jonathan opened the envelope. Inside were the printed photos. He looked at them one by one, his face growing paler. They weren't just photos from that Sunday. Mrs. Margaret had taken photos over the years. Gabriella playing with baby Ethan. Gabriella teaching Ethan to walk. Gabriella throwing him a birthday party. Gabriella taking care of him when he was sick. And there was more. There were photos of Jonathan and Jennifer leaving home early, returning late, always in a hurry. There were photos of Ethan crying at the window when his parents travelled. There were photos of Gabriella comforting the boy. "Why did you keep all this?" Jonathan asked, his voice low. "Because I like to take pictures. And because, over the years, I've been noticing the story unfolding in the house next door," Mrs. Margaret replied. "Do you want to know what these photos show me, Jonathan?" He didn't answer, just looked at her. "They show a woman who loved a boy as if he were her own. They show a boy who had an absent birth mother and a present mother of the heart. And they show the moment you destroyed that out of pure prejudice." "You don't understand," Jonathan tried to defend himself. It was humiliating. Him taking a bath in the garden as if he were a happy child. Mrs. Margaret interrupted him. "Because that's what he was in those photos. Happy. Did you see his smile?" Jonathan looked at the photos again. Indeed, Ethan was radiant. "And did you see what happened after?" Mrs. Margaret continued. "I see your son crying at the window every day. I see him refusing to go out into the garden. I see that French nanny you hired leaving the house looking frustrated. What do you think is happening inside?" "Ethan is going through an adjustment period," Jonathan replied, repeating what he had told himself. "Nonsense, that boy is suffering." "And you're too proud to admit you were wrong," Mrs. Margaret said firmly. "Jonathan, I've known you since you were a child. I watched you grow up. And I say with sadness, you've become exactly the type of person you wouldn't want as a neighbour." The words stung. Jonathan picked up the photos and went into the house without another word. But the images stayed in his head. Each one was a silent accusation. That night he couldn't sleep. He got up and went to Ethan's room. The boy was asleep, but there were tear stains on his face. Clutched in his arms was the teddy bear Gabriella had given him. Jonathan approached and saw that, even in his sleep, Ethan was whimpering. He muttered disjointed words, but every now and then it was clear. "Auntie Gabby, come back, Auntie Gabby." Something broke inside Jonathan at that moment. All the armour of pride, all the need to always be right, everything crumbled. He left the room and went to the study. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey and poured himself a drink, his hands shaking. The photos were scattered on the desk. He looked at each one again, but now with different eyes. He no longer saw a humiliating scene of a hose bath. He saw a boy being cared for with love. He saw dedication. He saw a real connection between two people. And he saw other things too. He saw how he and Jennifer were almost never present. How Gabriella was the one there for the important moments. How Ethan had grown up in her arms, not in theirs. Jennifer appeared at the study door wearing her robe. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Jen, I ruined everything," Jonathan said, his voice breaking. "I ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it." She came in and saw the photos. She picked up a few and looked at them carefully. "Where did these come from?" she asked. "Mrs. Margaret," he replied. "She photographed everything over the years." Jennifer kept looking at the photos, and tears began to fall. She had never seen that perspective of her son's life. She had never really stopped to think about how much time Gabriella spent with Ethan, about all the moments she missed while she was at work. "We failed him," she said, her voice choked. "I failed him. I put work ahead of my son. And when someone did what I should have been doing, you sent her away." "I know," Jonathan admitted. "And now he's destroyed. Audrey is going to resign. She said she can't help a child who is so traumatized." "He needs Gabriella," Jennifer stated. "He at least needs a proper goodbye, a closure that makes sense to him." "But how do I find her?" Jonathan asked. "I don't know where she lives. I don't have her phone number." "You never asked for her full address, her personal phone?" Jennifer was incredulous. "She gave the house number as a contact, and the address she gave was for a sister, but I don't remember the sister's name or the street," he confessed, ashamed. It was further proof of how he had treated Gabriella as just an employee, never really caring to know her as a person. The following days were even worse. Audrey did indeed resign, saying she couldn't continue. Ethan developed a complete aversion to baths. He screamed, thrashed, panicked every time they tried to take him to the bathroom. "It's trauma," Dr. Sarah explained in another session. "He associates that moment in the garden as the last happy moment before losing Gabriella. The bath is now linked to the loss, and the fact that you're forcing this moment is reinforcing the trauma." "But he needs to bathe," Jennifer said, desperate. "I know. For now, do the bare minimum without forcing. Use wet wipes, a bucket bath if he accepts it. And keep trying to find Gabriella. It's the only real solution I see," the psychologist was emphatic. Jonathan was transformed. The man who had always been so controlled, so self-assured, was now lost. He started researching about Gabriella. He remembered she had mentioned once that her sister lived on the north side, that she had 2 nephews, but the information was too vague. He tried asking the other household staff, the cook, the gardener, the driver, but none of them had direct contact with Gabriella. She was reserved, didn't talk much about her personal life. "Did she work for other families before?" Jennifer asked. "Maybe we can track her down that way." "No," Jonathan answered. "This was her first family. Before that, she worked in a clothing store. I remember because she said she always wanted to care for children, and when she heard we were looking for someone, she applied even without formal experience." It was ironic. He had hired Gabriella precisely for that, because she seemed genuinely interested in caring for Ethan, not just in having a job. And now, when he needed her, he had no idea how to find her. Meanwhile, Rebecca's article was ready. She had written it carefully, changing names and some details to protect identities, but keeping the essence of the story. It was about a nanny who dedicated years to caring for a child, only to be fired in a humiliating way for an act of love. She published it on a medium-sized news website focused on social issues. She didn't expect much impact, but thought it was important to share that story. It was about valuing domestic work, about recognizing that those who care for our children deserve respect and dignity. The article started slowly, with a few hundred views on the first day, but then someone shared it on social media, and another person, and another. Within a week, it had tens of thousands of views. The comments were intense. Women who worked as nannies or housekeepers shared their own stories. Others who were employers reflected on how they treated their employees. The debate grew. "The story went viral," Rebecca told Gabriella, showing her the phone. "Look how many people are commenting." Gabriella read some comments, moved. There were people from across the country saying they identified with it, that they had gone through something similar, that they knew someone who had. "People need to hear these stories," Rebecca said. "They need to understand that there are human beings with feelings behind every work uniform." What neither of them expected was that the story would reach so far. In some of the comments, people from the region began speculating about who the real characters might be. They described similar situations they had seen or heard about. One comment stood out. It was from a woman who said, "This reminds me of something I saw happen on my street. A nanny being sent away and a boy crying. I'll never forget that scene." Another person commented, "I know a nanny who went through exactly this. She cared for a boy since he was a baby and was fired for giving him a bath in the garden. She works now at a community daycare." The comments started connecting dots, and slowly, the real story began to be identified. First in the neighborhood where the daycare was located, then in wider and wider circles. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. On a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the firing, Jonathan was in an important meeting with international investors. These were people who could finance the expansion of his company, a multi-million-dollar business. The meeting was going well when his phone started vibrating insistently. He ignored it the first few times, but the messages wouldn't stop. During a coffee break, he checked his phone. They were messages from acquaintances, from business colleagues, some even from people he barely knew. Everyone was talking about an online article. Intrigued, he opened the link they had sent. It was Rebecca's story. Jonathan began to read and felt his blood run cold. The names were different, some details changed, but it was clearly about him, about Gabriella, about Ethan. And the comments. Thousands of comments, some supporting the nanny, others harshly criticizing the businessman in the story. Some even mentioned that they recognized the real situation, that they knew who the people involved were. Jonathan left the meeting. He simply grabbed his things and left, leaving the investors waiting. He got home and showed it to Jennifer. "Oh my God," she said, reading. "People are finding out it's us." In the following days, the situation escalated. Other business people started commenting in private WhatsApp groups. Jonathan began receiving messages from acquaintances, some with questionable support, others clearly critical. "Did you really fire the nanny because of a hose bath?" a college friend sent him. "Dude, that's ridiculous. I heard your story. What a complicated situation," another acquaintance commented, but the tone was more judgmental than sympathetic. The worst was when the story reached Jonathan's parents. His father, Richard Miller, a 70-year-old retired businessman, called furious. "Jonathan, I just read about a story that I hope isn't about you," he said on the phone. "Dad, I can explain. You fired the woman who took care of my grandson, Gabriella, because of a bath." Richard was incredulous. "What's gotten into you?" "Dad, it wasn't exactly like that." "Then explain to me how it was," the father demanded. Jonathan tried to justify himself, talking about image issues, about it seeming inappropriate. But even to himself as he spoke, the words sounded hollow. "Jonathan, your mother and I raised you to be better than this," Richard said, the disappointment clear in his voice. "Gabriella was a special person. She loved Ethan, and you treated her like trash." "I know," Jonathan admitted, for the first time out loud to someone other than Jennifer. "Then fix this," the father ordered. "Find that woman, apologize, and do whatever is necessary for Ethan to be that happy boy he used to be." After hanging up, Jonathan sat in the living room, staring into space. His life had always been controlled, planned. He had business success, money, status. But now, for the first time, he was facing a situation he couldn't solve with resources or power. A situation that required something he didn't have. Humility. Jennifer entered the room, holding a box. "What is that?" he asked. "I found it in Gabriella's room," she replied, her voice emotional. "I had never gone in there after she left, but today I did, and I found this." Jonathan opened the box. Inside was a notebook. He began flipping through it and realized it was a kind of diary of Ethan's development. Gabriella had written everything down, every new word he learned, every developmental milestone, every funny thing he said. Today, Ethan said, "I love you, Auntie," for the first time. My heart almost leaped out of my chest. Ethan learned to tie his shoes. We practiced for an hour until he could do it by himself. The proud look on his face was everything. Ethan was sad because his parents traveled again. I made his favorite pasta and we watched cartoons together. He fell asleep in my lap. First time Ethan rode a bike without training wheels. He fell twice but didn't give up. He ran to hug me when he succeeded, said I'm his best friend. Jonathan read page after page, tears beginning to fall. This wasn't just a record of development. It was a diary of love, of pure and genuine dedication. Gabriella didn't just take care of Ethan. She loved him deeply, and there was more in the box. Drawings that Ethan had made for Gabriella. Little notes with children's scribbles and words written by her for him. Printed photos, some already faded. One photo in particular caught Jonathan's attention. It was Ethan on his first day of school before entering the daycare. He was scared, clinging to Gabriella's leg. She was holding his hand, smiling, conveying safety. She was there in every important moment, Jennifer said, also crying, and we weren't. That night, Ethan had another of his recurring nightmares. He woke up screaming, crying, calling for Gabriella. Jonathan went to the room and tried to calm his son. "Ethan, it's all right. Daddy is here," he said, picking up the boy in his arms. "I want Auntie Gabby." Ethan sobbed. "Where is she? Why did she leave? Was I bad?" The question hit Jonathan like a punch in the stomach. His son thought it was his fault. He thought Gabriella had left because he had done something wrong. "No, Ethan, you weren't bad. You were never bad," Jonathan said, hugging the boy tightly. "Daddy was the bad one. Daddy made a very big mistake." "Then bring her back," Ethan asked, with that simple child's logic. "If you made a mistake, say sorry and bring her back." "I will try, son." "I promise I will try," Jonathan said, his voice choked. The next morning, Jonathan made a decision. He would use all the resources he had, all his network of contacts, everything necessary to find Gabriella. He started by calling the employment agency that had arranged her hiring years ago. "I need the data of a former employee," he said. "Sir, we cannot give out personal data," the attendant replied. "It's urgent. It's about a child's well-being," he insisted. After much discussion and signing some documents, he got an old address for Gabriella. It was from 5 years ago, but it was a start. He took the car and went there. It was a simple building, well kept, in a lower middle-class neighborhood. He went up to the apartment listed in the data and knocked on the door. A lady about 50 years old answered. "Yes?" she asked, suspicious upon seeing this man in an expensive suit at the door. "Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Gabriella Johnson. Did she live here?" "Gabriella? She was my tenant, but she left about 4 years ago," the lady replied. "Do you know where she went?" "She went to live with her sister, I think, in an area more to the north side near a daycare, but I don't know the exact address. It was little, but it was something." Jonathan thanked her and left. Near a daycare in the north side. Los Angeles had dozens of daycares in the north side, but he would search them all if necessary. He spent the next few days like that, calling daycares, going to some in person. At one of them, the attendant was more helpful. "Gabriella Johnson?" she repeated. "We don't have anyone by that name here. But there's a Gabriella who started working about 3 weeks ago at Sunshine Daycare over in Hope Village." Jonathan felt his heart race. It could be her. He thanked her and headed there immediately. Sunshine Daycare was a humble place, a converted house on a quiet street. He parked his car in front and watched for a moment. Through the gate he could see children playing in the yard. And then he saw her. Gabriella was crouched down talking to a little girl, that same gentle smile on her face. She was alive. She was well. She was taking care of other children. Jonathan got out of the car and approached the gate. Gabriella looked up, probably sensing someone was watching. When she saw who it was, the smile vanished. She stood up, said something to the child, and walked to the gate. "Mr. Jonathan," she said, her voice neutral, controlled. "What are you doing here?" "Gabriella, I need to talk to you," he said. "We have nothing to talk about," she replied, starting to turn away. "It's about Ethan," he said quickly. Gabriella stopped. She turned to him again, and now there was worry on her face. "Is he okay? Did something happen?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. "He's not well," Jonathan admitted. "He's very unwell. And it's all my fault." Gabriella closed the gate behind her and stepped out onto the street, where they could talk without the children around. "Tell me," she said. Jonathan told her everything. The fever, the sleepless nights, the rejection of the new nanny, the nightmares, the aversion to baths, the sessions with the psychologist, and the worst part, the fact that Ethan thought it was his fault, that Gabriella had left because he had done something wrong. Tears streamed down Gabriella's face as she listened. Her hands trembled. When Jonathan finished, she remained silent for a long moment. "How could you?" she finally said, her voice low but filled with emotion. "How could you do that to that boy? To an innocent child? I know I was wrong," Jonathan said. "I know, and there are no excuses. But please, I need your help. Ethan needs you." "You humiliated me, treated me as if I were nothing," Gabriella said, tears falling. "I dedicated every minute of my day to that boy. He was my life. And you threw me away as if I were worthless." "I know, and I apologize. With all my heart I apologize." Jonathan was desperate. "But this isn't about me. It's about Ethan. He's suffering, Gabriella. He's suffering a lot, and the only person who can help is you." "You want me to come back?" she asked, incredulous. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "Come back for Ethan. Not for me, not for Jennifer. For the boy you love." Gabriella shook her head. "I can't," she said. "These children here need me. I can't just abandon them." "Then at least come see him, once, so he can have closure. Understand that you didn't leave because of him," Jonathan pleaded. Gabriella looked back at the daycare where dozens of children were playing. Then she looked at Jonathan. She was torn between the love she felt for Ethan and the dignity she needed to maintain. "I need to think," she finally said. "Please, don't take long." "With each passing day he gets worse," Jonathan said, leaving a card with his contact numbers. "Call me anytime, please." He returned to his car and drove away. Gabriella stood there, the card in her hand, her heart broken. Mrs. Gladys appeared at the gate. "Who was that?" she asked. "My former employer," Gabriella replied. "The father of the boy I told you about." "And what did he want?" "He wants me to come back. Says the boy is suffering," Gabriella explained, tears returning. Mrs. Gladys hugged her. "And what do you want to do?" "I don't know," Gabriella confessed. "I love that boy. But how can I go back to a house where I was so disrespected?" "No one can decide that for you, my dear," Mrs. Gladys said wisely. "But I'll tell you one thing, sometimes love needs to be greater than pride. It's not about forgiving what they did to you. It's about not letting an innocent child suffer because of adults' actions." That night, Gabriella couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling in her sister's house, thinking of Ethan, thinking about how he might be feeling, if he still called out for her, if he was scared. She picked up her phone and opened the photo gallery. There were hundreds of pictures of Ethan. She scrolled through all of them, each one a painful but precious memory. His first birthday, the Halloween when she dressed him as a little bear, the Christmas when he woke up at 5 in the morning, too excited to go back to sleep. At 6 in the morning, she made her decision. She picked up her phone and called the number Jonathan had left. He answered on the first ring. "Gabriella?" His voice was anxious. "I'll visit him," she said, "but with conditions." "Anything," Jonathan replied immediately. "I'm not coming back to work for you." "This needs to be clear. I'm going to see Ethan. I'll explain it to him in a way a 3-year-old can understand. But then I'm leaving again," she stated. "I understand," Jonathan said, disappointment clear in his voice, but understanding he wasn't in a position to negotiate. "When can you come?" "Today, if possible," she replied. "The longer it takes, the worse it will be for him." "Come anytime. We'll be waiting." Gabriella showered, put on simple but presentable clothes, and took the bus. The trip to the upscale neighborhood where the Miller mansion was located took over an hour, but every minute felt like an eternity. Her heart was racing, her hands were sweating. How would she face that boy after a month away? When the bus finally stopped at the closest point to the house, she got off and walked the 2 blocks there. The gate was still the same, the house still imposing. But now she no longer had the key, she was no longer part of that place. She rang the bell. Jennifer answered the intercom. "Gabriella," her voice was emotional. "Please come in." The gate opened. Gabriella entered and walked along the path she had taken thousands of times, but now it was different. Now she was a visitor, no longer part of that family. Jennifer opened the door before she arrived. She was visibly moved. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You have no idea how much this means." "Where is Ethan?" Gabriella asked, getting straight to the point. "He's in his room. He doesn't know you're here," Jennifer explained. "We thought it best not to tell him to avoid getting his hopes up in case you didn't come." "May I go up?" Gabriella asked. Of course, you know the way, Jennifer said, wiping her own tears. Gabriella went up the stairs slowly. Each step was a memory. How many times had she climbed those stairs carrying baby Ethan? How many times had she run down because he had called for her? She stopped at his bedroom door. It was slightly open. She could see him sitting on the floor, playing without much enthusiasm with some building blocks. He was thinner, had dark circles under his eyes. He seemed to have aged a lot in a month. Gabriella took a deep breath and knocked lightly on the door. "Ethan?" she called softly. The boy looked up, confused for a moment. Then, when he processed who it was, his eyes widened. "Auntie Gabby," he said, his voice uncertain as if he couldn't believe it. "Hi, my love," she said, smiling even with tears in her eyes. Ethan dropped the toys and ran. He threw himself into her arms with such force he almost knocked her over. He started crying, clinging to her. You came back, he repeated between sobs. "I knew you would come back." Gabriella held him tight, feeling his little body trembling. He was so thin, so fragile. She sat on the floor and pulled him onto her lap, letting him cry, stroking his hair. "It's okay, my love. It's okay," she said, rocking gently. "Was I bad?" "Is that why you left?" Ethan asked, looking at her with those big, sad eyes. "No," Gabriella said firmly. "You were never bad. Never. You are the most perfect boy in the whole world." "Then why did you go?" he asked. Gabriella took a deep breath. How to explain concepts like being fired, prejudice, conflict between adults, to a 3-year-old? "Sometimes adults do things that don't make much sense," she began, choosing her words carefully. "And I had to leave. But not because you did anything wrong. It was never your fault." "But are you staying now? Are you coming back to live here?" Ethan asked, hopeful. That was the hard part. Gabriella looked into his eyes, feeling her heart break. "Ethan, my love, I won't be able to stay," she said gently. "I came today to see you, to give you a really big hug, but I'm not going to live here again." "Why?" He started crying again. "Please stay. I'll be good, I promise. I'll eat all my food. I'll go to bed on time. I won't throw tantrums. Just stay, please." Gabriella hugged him tighter, her own tears falling non-stop. "It's not about you being good. You're already good," she explained. "But Auntie Gabby has other children who need her now. Children who have no one to care for them. Do you understand?" "But I need you too," Ethan said, his voice small, broken. "I know. And I need you too," Gabriella confessed. "You'll always be in Auntie Gabby's heart, always. But now you have your dad and mom to take care of you." "They're not like you," Ethan said with that brutal honesty children have. Jennifer, who was listening from the doorway, let out a sob. Jonathan was beside her, watching the whole scene, feeling the extent of the damage he had caused. Gabriella stayed with Ethan for 2 hours, played with him, talked, answered all the questions he had, made his favorite snack which he ate for the first time in weeks, sang the songs he liked, tried, in every way possible, to make it clear that her love for him hadn't ended. It just had to be from afar. "Can Auntie Gabby visit you sometimes?" she asked. "If your dad and mum allow it." Ethan looked at his parents, who nodded positively. "Can you come always?" he asked her. "I'll try to come as often as I can," she promised. When it was time to leave, it was painful. Ethan tried to cling to her, begging her to stay just a little longer. Gabriella was heartbroken, but knew she had to be strong. "I'll come back, okay?" she said, kissing his forehead. "I promise I'll come back." "When?" he asked. "Soon. Very soon," she replied. She went down the stairs, Ethan whimpering in Jennifer's arms. At the door, Jonathan waited for her. "Gabriella, he began. "You don't need to say anything," she interrupted. "I didn't come for you, I came for Ethan." "I know, but still, thank you," he said. "And I'm sorry, truly." Gabriella nodded and left. She walked the 2 blocks to the bus stop, with a heavy heart, but, in a way, lighter too. She had done what needed to be done. She had given Ethan what he needed, the certainty that it wasn't his fault, that she loved him, that he hadn't been abandoned without reason. On the bus back, she thought about everything that had happened. Thought about Ethan, how he had lost weight, how he was suffering. Thought about the daycare, the children who now depended on her. Thought about Mrs. Gladys and everything she had taught about love and dedication. When she arrived at the daycare, Mrs. Gladys was waiting. "How did it go?" she asked. "It was hard," Gabriella admitted. "But it was necessary." "And the boy?" "He's suffering a lot. But I think it helped him to see me, to understand it wasn't his fault," Gabriella replied. "And you, how are you?" "I don't know," Gabriella confessed. "My heart is still there with him, but I know I did the right thing by staying here." The following weeks were strange. Ethan had improved after Gabriella's visit. He wasn't cured, but he was better. He started eating more regularly. The nightmares decreased. But he still asked about her every day, still hoped she would show up again. Jonathan kept his promise to let Gabriella visit him. She went every week, usually on Sundays, stayed a few hours, played with Ethan, talked, and every time she left, it got harder for both of them. Jennifer began re-evaluating her priorities. She talked with the partners at the firm and reduced her workload, started leaving earlier, spending more time at home, tried to be present for Ethan's important moments. Jonathan changed too, started working from home a few times a week. He started having lunch with his son, giving him baths, reading stories before bed. He was clumsy at first, not good with kids, but he was trying, but there was still a void. Ethan had improved, but he wasn't that completely happy boy he used to be anymore. There was a sadness in his eyes, a lack of something that couldn't be filled by sporadic visits. Rebecca continued following the story closely. The article she had written kept circulating, generating discussions. Some people criticized the nanny for not wanting to come back, saying she should think about the child's well-being. Others defended that she had every right to preserve her dignity. One day, Rebecca went to pick up her daughter from daycare and found Gabriella particularly downcast. "Can I ask you a question?" Rebecca said. "Of course," Gabriella replied. "Why don't you come back?" Rebecca asked directly. "I'm not judging, I just want to understand." Gabriella was silent for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Because if I go back, it will be as if nothing happened," she finally answered. "As if it were okay to treat me that way as long as in the end I come back. And it's not okay. I'm a human being, Rebecca. I have feelings. I have dignity. I'm not an object that can be discarded and then retrieved when it's convenient." "But what about Ethan?" Rebecca asked. "Ethan is what hurts the most," Gabriella admitted, tears beginning to form. "Every day I wake up thinking about him. I wonder if he's okay, if he ate properly, if he slept well. Seeing him suffer is killing me. But if I go back now, what am I teaching him? That it's okay to disrespect people if you apologize afterwards." "I see your point," Rebecca said. "And there's more," Gabriella continued. "I'm not just responsible for Ethan anymore. I have 15 children here who wait for me every day. 15 families who depend on my work. I can't just abandon them." Rebecca nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. There was no easy answer, no perfect solution. It was a tragedy created by a moment of prejudice and pride, and now everyone was paying the price. A few more weeks passed. It was the end of March, almost 2 months since the dismissal. Mrs. Margaret, the neighbor who had witnessed everything, had followed the whole situation with interest. She knew about Gabriella's visits, saw Ethan at the window waiting for her on Sundays. One day, Mrs. Margaret felt a sharp pain in her chest. She tried to ignore it, but it got worse. She called her daughter, who came running and took her to the hospital. She was diagnosed with a heart arrhythmia, nothing fatal but concerning. She was hospitalized for a few days. During her hospitalization, she thought a lot about life, about what really mattered. She thought about how many times she had seen injustices and remained silent, how many times she chose not to get involved. And she thought about Ethan, about how that boy was paying for the mistakes of the adults. When she was discharged, she asked her daughter to take her to the Miller house. Jonathan was surprised when he found her at the door. "Mrs. Margaret," he greeted. "Are you okay? I heard you were in the hospital." "I'm better. May I come in?" she asked. "Of course," he made way. They sat in the living room. Margaret went straight to the point. "Jonathan, I am 73 years old. I've been through a lot in life, seen a lot, and one of the lessons I've learned is that some mistakes, if not fully corrected, continue to cause harm forever, she began. I know I acted wrongly, Jonathan said. I've been trying to make it right. Trying is not enough, she said firmly. That nanny loves your son, and your son loves her. You destroyed that out of pure prejudice and pride, and now you want everything to be resolved with a few Sunday visits? She doesn't want to come back, Jonathan defended himself. I already asked. And do you understand why? Mrs. Margaret asked. You humiliated her. He treated her like trash, and now he wants her to come back and pretend nothing happened. So what do I do? Jonathan asked, genuinely lost. You need to do more than apologize. You need to show you've really changed, Mrs. Margaret said, and there's something you can do to start. She took an envelope from her bag and handed it to Jonathan. It was the same envelope with the photos she had shown before, but now there was more. There were photos of the daycare where Gabriella worked, of the building needing repairs, of the children playing in a small space. This is the daycare where Gabriella works now, Mrs. Margaret explained. A humble place, but full of love. A place that's always needing help, resources, but keeps going because people like her dedicate themselves beyond what they should. I don't understand, Jonathan said. You're a businessman. You have resources. You have connections, Mrs. Margaret spoke. If you really want to show you've changed, if you really want to do something meaningful, help this daycare. Not as a one-time charity, but as something permanent. Create a social project. Invest for real. But this won't bring Gabriella back, Jonathan said. It's not about bringing her back, it's about doing the right thing, Mrs. Margaret replied. But who knows, if you show you've really learned the lesson, if you show you value the work she does, maybe she'll consider a possibility that's good for everyone. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Jonathan thought about Mrs. Margaret's words for days. The idea of creating a social project wasn't new to him. Many businessmen did it, but usually it was more about image than real dedication. But now it was different. Now it was personal. He scheduled a meeting with his administrative team and presented the proposal, create a permanent fund to support Sunshine Daycare. Not a one-time donation, but a long-term commitment. Building renovation, purchase of educational materials, hiring more staff, everything that was needed. Mr. Miller, may I ask why specifically this daycare? One of the managers questioned. Jonathan thought about lying, giving a corporate answer, but he decided on the truth. Because someone I respect very much works there, and because I owe it to her, he answered simply. The project was approved. Jonathan went personally to the daycare to present the proposal. He requested a meeting with Mrs. Gladys and arrived at the agreed time, but before entering, he saw Gabriella in the yard with the children. She was organizing a game, assigning roles to each child. She had the same dedication, the same affection she had with Ethan. It was clear that this wasn't just a job for her, it was a calling. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Gladys greeted him. Please come in. In the small makeshift office of the daycare, Jonathan presented the project. He talked about the complete renovation of the building, about buying new equipment, about fair wages for the staff, about everything he was willing to do. Mrs. Gladys listened to him in silence. When he finished, she asked, "And what do you expect in return?" "Nothing," Jonathan answered, and it was true. "I just want to help. I want to do something meaningful." "This won't bring Gabriella back to your home," Mrs. Gladys said, repeating Mrs. Margaret's words. "I know," Jonathan admitted, "but maybe it can make a small difference. Maybe it can start to fix a little of the harm I caused." Mrs. Gladys studied his face, looking for signs of falseness or ulterior motives, but she saw only a tired, broken man trying to do the right thing. "I'll accept your help," she said finally, "but with one condition. This can't be about you. It can't be about clearing your conscience or improving your image. It has to be about the children." "It is about the children," Jonathan agreed. "Then we have a deal." Gabriella found out about the project that afternoon. Mrs. Gladys called her for a private conversation and explained everything. "Is he really going to do this?" Gabriella asked, incredulous. "He said he will, and he seems sincere," Mrs. Gladys replied. "But you need to tell me. Does this bother you? If it does, I'll refuse. You're more important than any renovation." Gabriella stayed silent, thinking. Part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to keep her distance from anything that came from Jonathan. But another part, the part that loved those children, knew she couldn't deny them a chance at better conditions. "It doesn't bother me," she finally said. "If he truly wants to help, the children deserve that help." "Are you sure?" Mrs. Gladys confirmed. "I am," Gabriella replied. "But make it clear that this changes nothing between him and me. This is about the children, not about us." The work began the following week. Jonathan hired the best renovation company he knew, but asked them to do everything without disrupting the daycare's routine too much. The children were fascinated by the construction, the workers, everything being transformed. Jonathan went there every week to check on the progress. He always crossed paths with Gabriella, but their encounters were polite, distant. She thanked him for the project, but made it clear that it didn't change the past. Ethan continued improving slowly. Gabriella's Sunday visits became the most important part of his week. He counted the days, made drawings to give her, saved up things to tell her. Jennifer noticed that she herself had developed a stronger bond with her son during those months. She still felt guilty about all the lost time, but she was doing her best to make up for it. She learned his favorite songs, discovered that he loved helping in the kitchen, that he had a natural talent for drawing. One afternoon she was in the kitchen with Ethan making cookies when he asked, "Mum, does Auntie Gabby not like me anymore?" The question took Jennifer by surprise. "Of course she likes you, my love. Why do you think she doesn't?" she asked. "Because she only comes to visit me. She doesn't live here anymore," Ethan explained with that child's logic. "Ethan, Auntie Gabby loves you very much," Jennifer said, crouching down to his level. "She loves you more than anything, but sometimes adults make choices that aren't easy to explain to children. I want her to come back," Ethan said, his eyes filling with tears. "I know, my love. I wish that too," Jennifer admitted, hugging her son. That night, Jennifer had a long conversation with Jonathan. "We need to accept that Gabriella may never come back," she said, "and we need to help Ethan accept that too." "But he's better when she comes," Jonathan argued. "He is. But he also gets worse when she leaves again," Jennifer pointed out. "It's creating a cycle of hope and disappointment. Maybe a clean break would be better." "Are you suggesting we forbid her from coming?" Jonathan was shocked. "No. I'm suggesting we have an honest talk with her. About what's best for Ethan in the long run," Jennifer explained. The following Sunday, when Gabriella arrived for the visit, Jennifer asked to speak with her before she went up to see Ethan. "Gabriella, we need to talk about this situation," Jennifer began, gentle but direct. "I was thinking the same thing," Gabriella admitted. "I've noticed that Ethan gets confused by these visits. He's better when you come, but worse when you leave," Jennifer explained. "And that's not good for him." "I know," Gabriella said, the pain evident in her voice. "I've been thinking a lot about this too, and I think maybe you're right. Maybe a clean break would be better." "That's not what I want," Jennifer was quick to say, "but it might be what's best for him." "So what do we do?" Gabriella asked. "I don't know," Jennifer admitted, "but we need to think of something, because this current situation isn't sustainable." They fell silent for a moment, each lost in her own thoughts. It was then that Jonathan entered the room with a proposal he had thought of during the night. "What if you came back, but in a different way?" he asked. "What do you mean?" Gabriella asked. "You work at the daycare in the morning, right?" he began. "What if you came here in the afternoon, not as a live-in nanny, but as, I don't know, as someone who works part-time?" "I don't know, Jonathan," Gabriella said, hesitant. "Just listen," he continued. "You keep your job at the daycare, you keep your independence, your dignity, but you come here a few afternoons a week to be with Ethan, not as an employee, as family." "As family," Gabriella repeated, incredulous. "Yes," Jennifer joined the conversation. "Gabriella, you raised my son. You've been more present in his life than I was in the early years. You're not an employee. You should never have been treated as just an employee." "But I was the employee," Gabriella pointed out. "No, you were the caregiver, the educator, And in many ways you were a mother to him, Jennifer said, tears beginning to form. And it took me too long to accept that, but it's the truth. And instead of fighting it, maybe we should embrace it. Gabriella fell silent, processing those words. During all those years working for the Miller family, she had never imagined hearing something like that. She had always known her place, always respected the boundaries. But now Jennifer was saying that maybe those boundaries had been wrong from the start. I need to think, Gabriella finally said. This is a lot to process all at once. Of course. We understand, Jennifer said. But while you think, please go see Ethan, he's waiting for you. Gabriella went up the stairs, but her head was spinning with so many conflicting emotions. When she reached the room, Ethan greeted her with the smile she loved so much. Auntie Gabby, I made a drawing for you, he shouted, running to show her. It was a drawing of him and her holding hands, with hearts all around. Below, in big crooked letters, he had tried to write, I love you, Auntie Gabby. Gabriella felt the tears returning. How could she say no to that boy? But how could she go back to a house where she had been so humiliated? She spent the afternoon with Ethan, but her mind was divided. He noticed she was different, quieter. Are you sad, Auntie Gabby? He asked with that perception children have. No, my love. I'm just thinking, she replied, forcing a smile. Thinking about what? About grown-up things, she said, not wanting to lie, but also unable to tell the whole truth. When it was time to leave, Ethan hugged her tighter than usual. I love you, Auntie Gabby, he said, forever. I love you too, Ethan, forever, she replied, kissing his forehead. During the trip back, Gabriella stared out the bus window, watching the city go by. She thought about everything that had happened in the last few months. She thought about the Ethan she had met as a baby, the boy she had helped raise, the bond they shared. But she also thought about the humiliation she had felt, the way she had been treated, how she had to protect her own dignity. When she got home, Vanessa was waiting with hot coffee. How did it go? She asked. Gabriella told her everything, Jonathan and Jennifer's proposal, the conversation about coming back in a different way, the doubts she had. And what do you want to do? Vanessa asked. I don't know, Gabriella confessed. Part of me wants to run back, wants to be with Ethan every day again. But another part is scared. Fear of being hurt again, fear that nothing has really changed. Do you trust that they've changed? Vanessa went straight to the point. I don't know, Gabriella Johnson answered. Jonathan seems remorseful, Jennifer too. But is it real remorse or just guilt? Because Ethan is suffering. Good question, Vanessa agreed. And only you can answer. Gabriella spent days thinking. She talked with Mrs. Gladys, who gave wise advice, but made clear that the decision had to be hers. She talked with Rebecca, who as a journalist had a more objective view of the situation. What does your heart say? Rebecca asked. My heart says to go back, but my head says to be careful, Gabriella answered. Then maybe the answer is in the middle, Rebecca suggested. Maybe you don't need to choose one extreme or the other. That's when Gabriella had an idea. If she was going to consider returning, she needed guarantees. She needed to be sure she wouldn't just be a disposable employee again. She needed security, respect, dignity. The following week, when Jonathan went to the daycare to check on the progress of the renovations, Gabriella asked to speak with him privately. About that proposal, she began. I have some terms. Go ahead, Jonathan said, giving her his full attention. First, I want a formal contract. With all my employment rights guaranteed, with clear clauses about responsibilities and limits, she said firmly. I agree, Jonathan accepted immediately. Second, I continue working at the daycare. I won't abandon these children, so I can only come to your house in the afternoons and not every day, she continued. Understood. How many days per week could you? He asked. 3 days, maybe 4, she answered. I need to see how I'll divide my time. Any time you can give to Ethan is more than he has now, Jonathan said. Third, and most important, Gabriella spoke with even more seriousness. If I return, it won't be like before. I won't accept being treated as inferior. I won't accept disrespect. The first time I feel I'm being diminished or humiliated, I'll leave and won't come back. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Jonathan answered, feeling the weight of her words. "Gabriella, I know I can't erase what I did, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to show that I've changed, that I've learned. I don't want promises. I want actions," she said. "Then you'll get actions," he assured. "And one last thing," Gabriella added. "I want Jennifer to spend more time with Ethan. I'm not returning to replace his mother. I'm returning to complement. She needs to be present." "She's trying," Jonathan defended his wife. "She's been working less, spending more time at home." "Then she needs to keep trying," Gabriella said, "because if I return and notice you're using my presence as an excuse to be absent again, I'll leave." "I understand," Jonathan said. "Any other conditions?" "For now, that's it," Gabriella answered. "But I'll need a few days to think about whether I really want to accept." "Of course. But Gabriella, just one thing," Jonathan said before she left. "Thank you. Thank you for at least considering. It's already more than I deserve." Gabriella nodded and went to take care of the daycare children. She had much to think about, many variables to consider, but for the first time in months she was seriously considering the possibility of returning. That night, she called Jennifer. It was a long conversation where Jennifer opened her heart in a way she never had before. "Gabriella, I need to tell you something," Jennifer began. "I was jealous of you." "Jealous?" Gabriella was surprised. "Yes, jealous because you could make my son smile in a way I never could, because he ran to you when he got hurt, not to me. Because you knew all the little things about him that I should have known but didn't," Jennifer confessed, her voice choked with emotion. "Mrs. Jennifer, let me finish," Jennifer requested. "For a long time I blamed you for it, as if it were your fault that I made bad choices, as if it were your fault that I prioritized work over family. But it wasn't. It was my fault, and it took me a long time to accept that. I never wanted to take your place," Gabriella said. "I know, and that's why I feel so bad about everything. You were doing your job, doing it with love and dedication, and instead of being grateful, I was distant. Instead of valuing you, I felt threatened," Jennifer admitted. "And when Jonathan fired you, part of me was relieved, because I thought I would finally have my son all to myself." "And did you?" Gabriella asked without judgment, just curiosity. "No, because he didn't want just me. He wanted you too," Jennifer replied. "And that's when I realized it wasn't a competition, that a child can love more than one person. That love doesn't divide, it multiplies." Gabriella fell silent, moved by those words. "If you come back, Gabriella, it won't be like before," Jennifer continued, "because I will be present. I will learn from you. I will be the mother that Ethan deserves. And you will be, well, you will be you. You'll be the person he loves, that he needs, that he has always needed." "I need some time," Gabriella said. "But thank you for this conversation, for being honest." "Thank you for at least listening," Jennifer replied. The following days were a time of deep reflection for Gabriella. She spoke with everyone she could, Vanessa, Mrs. Gladys, Rebecca, even with some of the mothers of the children at the daycare. Each person gave a different opinion, but they all agreed on one thing. The decision had to be hers. Mrs. Gladys was particularly wise in her advice. "My dear, I have lived a long life. I've seen a lot of things," she said. "And one thing I've learned is that sometimes people really change. Not always, but sometimes, and when they change, they deserve a second chance." "But what if I go back and they haven't really changed?" Gabriella asked. "What if everything happens again?" "Then you leave. But this time, not with the pain of having lost something, but with the certainty that you tried," Mrs. Gladys answered. "The difference is that now you are in control. You have conditions, you have boundaries, you have options. You are no longer a desperate person needing a job. You are an experienced professional, choosing where you want to work." Those words resonated with Gabriella. It was true. The situation was completely different now. She had autonomy. She had decision-making power. She had the daycare as an alternative. She wasn't trapped. The following Sunday, Gabriella asked to speak with Jonathan, Jennifer, and Ethan together. It was time to make a decision. "I've decided," she announced when they were all seated in the living room. "I will accept the offer. Ethan shouted with joy and ran to hug her. Jonathan and Jennifer smiled, clearly relieved. "But," Gabriella continued when Ethan calmed down, "it has to be very clear that this is a professional agreement. I have my conditions, and they need to be respected." "They will be," Jonathan assured. "I will start by coming 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. From 2 in the afternoon to 7 in the evening," Gabriella established. "I keep my job at the daycare in the mornings, and on the days I'm not here, you need to be here. Understood?" "Understood," Jennifer agreed. "And Ethan," Gabriella turned to the boy, "Auntie is going to see you more often again. But I won't be living here, do you understand?" "But you'll come to see me?" he asked. "I will. 3 times a week," she confirmed. "Not every day," he negotiated, like the child he was. "Not every day, my love. But 3 times is a lot, isn't it?" she said, stroking his face. Ethan thought about it and accepted. 3 times was better than just once a week, like it had been. Gabriella's return was gradual. The first week she came on Tuesdays and Thursdays, skipping Saturday to give everyone time to adjust. She arrived at 2, spent the afternoon with Ethan and left at 7. The routine was different from before. Previously she handled everything alone. Now Jennifer was present. At first it was strange, both women trying to share the same space, caring for the same child. But little by little they began to find a rhythm. Jennifer watched how Gabriella interacted with Ethan, learning from her. The patience, the way of explaining things, the educational games. And Gabriella saw Jennifer genuinely trying. It wasn't perfect, she was clumsy sometimes, but it was sincere. Jonathan kept his word and hired a lawyer to draw up a formal contract. Gabriella took it for Vanessa to read, who said, "Sis, this contract is better than a lot of formal jobs out there. He included benefits that aren't even required by law." "He's trying," Gabriella commented. "And you? Are you starting to believe he's changed?" Vanessa asked. "I'm cautious," Gabriella replied, "but I think so, he is changing." At the daycare, the renovations were progressing well. The building was being completely remodeled. New bathrooms, an expanded kitchen, a covered play area, air-conditioned rooms. The children were fascinated by all the changes. "Auntie Gabby, after the renovation, it's going to be like a castle," little Emily said excitedly. "It's going to be beautiful, my love," Gabriella agreed. Mrs. Gladys was also thrilled with the improvements, but one day she called Gabriella for a serious talk. "My dear, I need to tell you something," she said. "What is it?" Gabriella asked, worried by the serious tone. "I'm going to retire," Mrs. Gladys announced. "I'm almost 70. It's time to rest. But who will coordinate the daycare?" Gabriella became concerned. "I was thinking of you," Mrs. Gladys said, smiling. "Me? But I have no experience with administration," Gabriella protested. "You have something better. You have heart. You have dedication. You have love for these children, Mrs. Gladys explained. "And I will teach you everything you need to know before I leave. It won't be tomorrow. In about 6 months, maybe a year. But I want you to start preparing." The proposal left Gabriella stunned. Coordinating the daycare would be a huge responsibility, but it would also be an opportunity to do something bigger, to impact even more lives. "I need to think," she said. "Of course, but think about it carefully," Mrs. Gladys requested, "because I wouldn't trust this daycare to just anyone. I trust you." Gabriella left that conversation with her head spinning. It was a lot of change in a short time. 3 months ago, she had been fired and was sleeping on her sister's couch. Now she was returning to care for Ethan under new terms and being considered to coordinate a daycare. That evening, she talked about it with Rebecca, who had become a close friend. "This is an amazing opportunity," Rebecca said. "You would be perfect for coordinating the daycare. But what about time?" "I'm already split between the daycare and Ethan," Gabriella pointed out. "Coordinating doesn't mean being there all the time. It means supervising, planning, making decisions," Rebecca explained. "And as for Ethan, he's already 3.5. Soon he'll be in full-time preschool. He'll naturally need you less." It was true. Ethan was growing up. He wouldn't be that baby needing constant attention anymore. And that was good. It meant he was developing well. The weeks passed and the new routine solidified. Ethan was visibly happier. It wasn't the same as before, because nothing ever goes back to being exactly the same. But he was a happy boy, with less anxiety, eating and sleeping well again. And something unexpected began to happen. Jonathan started to truly participate in his son's life. Not because Gabriella or Jennifer demanded it, but because he wanted to. He came home from work earlier, played with Ethan, helped with homework, gave baths. "Daddy, today I learned a new song with Auntie Gabby. Want to hear it?" Ethan asked one day. "Of course I do," Jonathan replied, putting down his phone to pay attention. Ethan sang the song, off-key and stumbling over some words, but with enthusiasm. When he finished, Jonathan applauded. "That was beautiful, champ," he said, picking up his son. "You're very smart." Gabriella, watching from afar, felt her heart warm. This was what she had always wanted to see. A family truly connected. Jennifer had changed too. She had drastically reduced her workload. She was present at dinners, put Ethan to bed, talked with him about his day, and something important, she was learning from Gabriella. "How do you get him to eat vegetables?" Jennifer asked one day. "I make it seem fun," Gabriella explained. "I tell stories about each vegetable, invent characters. He forgets he's eating healthy food because he's distracted by the story." "Can you teach me?" Jennifer asked, without any pride or embarrassment. "Of course," Gabriella agreed. A kind of partnership was forming between them. They weren't exactly friends, but there was mutual respect, collaboration. They were working together for Ethan's well-being. One day, 3 months after Gabriella had returned, Ethan got sick. It wasn't serious, just a bad flu, but he needed constant care. It was a Tuesday, one of the days Gabriella came. When she arrived, she found Jennifer exhausted, sitting by Ethan's bed, who was sleeping with a fever. "He was up all night," Jennifer explained. "Me too." "Go rest a bit. I'll take care of him," Gabriella offered. "I don't want to leave him," Jennifer said, but it was clear she was at her limit. "I know, but you won't help him if you collapse from exhaustion," Gabriella said gently. "Go sleep for 2 hours. I promise I'll call if he needs you." Jennifer hesitated but eventually agreed. She left the room and went to hers. Gabriella stayed by Ethan's side, placing cold compresses on his forehead, giving medicine at the right times, singing softly to calm him when he woke up frightened. When Jennifer returned 2 hours later, she found Ethan sleeping peacefully and Gabriella reading a book by the bed. "How is he?" Jennifer whispered. "The fever has gone down. He's better," Gabriella replied. "And you, did you manage to rest?" "I did. Thank you," Jennifer said. Then, after a moment of silence, she added, "Gabriella, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you come back, really?" Jennifer asked. "After everything we did to you, why did you give this family a second chance?" Gabriella thought carefully before answering. "For Ethan," she said, "because he wasn't to blame for anything, and because I believed that people can change. Not always, but sometimes." "And do you think we've changed?" Jennifer asked, vulnerable. "You're changing," Gabriella replied honestly. "It's not perfect. You still make mistakes sometimes, but I see genuine effort, and that counts for a lot." Jennifer nodded, tears beginning to fall. "I'm sorry for everything, for treating you as invisible for years, for not valuing what you did, for not stopping Jonathan from firing you that way," she said, the words tumbling out. "I know," Gabriella said softly, "and I accept your apology." It was an important moment of healing. It didn't erase the past, but it helped build a different future. At the daycare, the renovations were nearing completion. The place was unrecognizable, modern, colorful, equipped with everything needed to provide quality education for those underprivileged children. Jonathan had gone beyond what was promised. Besides the renovation, he had established a permanent fund that ensured the daycare's maintenance, the employees' salaries, and even scholarships for the children when they got older. He had turned that project into something sustainable in the long term. The official opening of the renovated daycare was scheduled for a Saturday. It would be a party, with the children, the parents, the community, and Jonathan and Jennifer were invited to attend. "I'm not sure it's a good idea for us to go," Jonathan said to Gabriella when she told him about the event. "Why not?" she asked. "Because, I don't know. It feels like we'd be seeking credit, you know," he explained. You did something good. You changed the lives of dozens of children and families, Gabriella said. There's no shame in being there to see the outcome of that. But some people still see us as the villains of the story, Jennifer pointed out. That article that came out, the comments, the people who matter know the truth, Gabriella said. And if there are still those who judge, that's their problem, not yours. Do what you think is right. In the end, Jonathan and Jennifer decided to go. They brought Ethan, who was excited to see the place where Auntie Gabby worked in the morning. The party was beautiful. Mrs. Gladys gave an emotional speech about the daycare's transformation, about how it would change the lives of so many children. She publicly thanked Jonathan, acknowledging his generosity. This man could have done the minimum. He could have made a one-time donation and forgotten about it, she said. But he chose to do something lasting. He chose to truly make a difference, and for that, on behalf of all the children and families who will be impacted by this project, I thank you. Jonathan was uncomfortable with the attention, but Gabriella could see there was something different about him. A genuine humility, a recognition that this wasn't about him, it was about the children. Ethan was enchanted with the daycare. He played with the other children, explored every corner. He met Emily, Michael, Lily Grace, William, all the children Gabriella always talked about. Auntie Gabby, these kids are lucky to have you, he said with that adorable childlike innocence. And I'm lucky to have all of them, Gabriella replied, hugging him, including you. During the party, Rebecca, who had come to cover the event for her website, approached Jonathan. Mr. Miller, may I ask a few questions? She requested. Jonathan recognized her name. She was the journalist who had written that article. Of course, he agreed, even though he was nervous. What motivated you to do this project? She asked. Jonathan could have given a corporate answer, talked about social responsibility, about giving back to the community. But he decided on the truth. I made a terrible mistake, he began. I treated someone badly who didn't deserve it, and this project is part of my path to fixing that, to being a better person. Are you talking about the nanny story? Rebecca asked directly. I am, he confirmed. And before you ask, yes, it was about me, about my family. I was the businessman in that story, and I was wrong. Rebecca was surprised by his honesty. Do you want me to publish this? She asked. If you think it's worth a story, yes, Jonathan replied. People deserve to know that sometimes the villains in stories can change, not necessarily to be forgiven, but to show that change is possible. Rebecca wrote the follow-up article. She talked about the daycare project, but also about Jonathan's journey, about how a moment of prejudice and pride led to a path of learning and change, about how he was trying to be better. The article also had a big impact, but this time it was different. There were still critics, people who said he was just trying to clean up his image, but there were also many people recognizing the courage to admit mistakes publicly, to try to do things differently. The months went by. Ethan turned 4 years old, and the party was a joint celebration. Gabriella helped with the planning, but Jennifer was fully involved. She chose the theme with Ethan, made the party favors, organized the games. Mommy is doing everything for my party, Ethan proudly told Gabriella. I know, and it's turning out beautiful, Gabriella praised, seeing the smile on Jennifer's face. The party gathered Ethan's little friends from preschool, some children from the daycare where Gabriella worked, family members, family friends, and of course Mrs. Margaret, the neighbor who had been a silent witness to that whole story. What a change, isn't it? Mrs. Margaret commented to Gabriella as they watched the party. Yes, it is. It seems like a different family, Gabriella agreed. And it is. You've built something different, better, Mrs. Margaret said. You know I photographed everything from the beginning, don't you? I heard about that, Gabriella smiled. I'm going to give you the photos, all of them, Mrs. Margaret offered. They're yours by right. They're the story of you and Ethan. Thank you, Mrs. Margaret, Gabriella thanked, moved. At the daycare, Gabriella was becoming more and more involved in the coordination. Mrs. Gladys was training her, teaching her about administration, about how to deal with parents, about bureaucracy, about everything involved in keeping a daycare running. You're ready, Mrs. Gladys said one day. No, I'm not, Gabriella protested. I still have so much to learn. No one is completely ready for anything, Mrs. Gladys said wisely. But you have the main thing, love for what you do and for the children. The rest you learn along the way. The transition was scheduled for 3 months from then. Mrs. Gladys was going to officially retire, and Gabriella would take over as coordinator. It was scary but also exciting. At the Miller's home, the routine had stabilized. Ethan was well, happy, developing normally. The relationship between Gabriella, Jennifer, and Jonathan had found a balance. There was respect, there was cooperation, there were even moments of genuine connection. One day, Jennifer called Gabriella to talk in private. "Gabriella, I have a proposal to make," she began. "What is it?" "The firm where I work is offering me a partnership. It's a huge opportunity for career growth," Jennifer explained, "but it will require more time, more dedication." Gabriella felt her heart tighten. Not again. "Before you think the worst," Jennifer hurried to say, "I'm not asking you to take on more responsibilities with Ethan. I'm asking for your advice, whether I should accept or not." "I don't understand." Gabriella was confused. "These last months have shown me how much I missed of Ethan's early years," Jennifer explained, "and I don't want to miss any more, so I'm unsure whether I should accept this promotion or not." "And what does your heart say?" Gabriella asked. "My heart says that career isn't worth more than family," Jennifer answered. "But my head says that this opportunity won't come again. And I'm confused." "Can I be honest?" Gabriella asked. "Please." "I think you can have both," Gabriella said. "You can have career and family, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to make conscious choices, set boundaries, prioritize. It's not easy, but it's possible." "You think so?" "I do. And you know why? Because now you're not doing it alone anymore," Gabriella explained. "You have Jonathan more present. You have me in the afternoons. You have a support network. And you have something more important. You have awareness. You won't let work take over again because you learned the lesson. So if you want to accept this promotion, accept it, but with your eyes open." Jennifer thought about those words for days. In the end, she decided to accept the partnership, but with clear conditions. She set time boundaries, delegated more responsibilities to the team, created a structure that allowed professional success without sacrificing personal life. Ethan was growing up fast. He would soon turn 5 and start real school. He could already read some words, write his name, count to 100. He was a smart, curious boy, full of energy. And more importantly, he was a happy boy. The shadow of those difficult months had been left behind. He still had occasional nightmares, moments of insecurity, but they were rare. Overall, he was an emotionally healthy child. One Saturday, after spending the afternoon with Ethan, Gabriella was getting ready to leave when he called her. "Auntie Gabby, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my love." "Are you my real aunt?" he asked. The question took Gabriella by surprise. "Not by blood," she explained, "but in every other way, yes." "So can I call you aunt always?" he asked. "Always," she confirmed, hugging him. "Good, because I love you," he said simply. "I love you too, Ethan." "So much," she replied, feeling the tears coming. Jennifer and Jonathan, who were at the door listening, exchanged glances. There was no more jealousy, no more insecurity, just gratitude for having that extraordinary woman in their son's life. When the day of Mrs. Gladys's official retirement came, the daycare threw a party. All the children, all the parents, all the staff were there. Mrs. Gladys gave an emotional speech, talked about the 30 years she had dedicated to that place, about all the children who had passed through there. "And now," she concluded, "I pass the baton to someone who will take care of this daycare with the same love that I did. Someone who understands that our work is not just taking care of children, but changing lives. Gabriella Johnson, come here." Gabriella went up to the makeshift stage, nervous. Mrs. Gladys hugged her and symbolically handed over the keys to the daycare. "Take good care of them," Mrs. Gladys said. "I will, I promise," Gabriella replied. In the audience, Jonathan, Jennifer, and Ethan watched with pride. Ethan was particularly excited. "Daddy, "Auntie Gabby is the boss now," he commented, impressed. "Yes, champ, she is very special," Jonathan agreed. That night, when everyone had left, Gabriella was alone in the daycare for the first time. She walked through the newly renovated hallways, entered every room, sat in the small chairs. That was her place now. Her responsibility. Her dream. She thought about everything that had happened in the last year. How life could change drastically from one moment to the next. How the worst moments could lead to the best. How pain could turn into growth. She took out her phone and took a picture of the main room with all the children's drawings on the walls. She sent it to Vanessa, to Rebecca, to Mrs. Gladys, and she hesitated, but also sent it to Jennifer and Jonathan. "Thank you for helping me get here," she wrote in the message. Jennifer replied immediately, "Thank you for everything." Jonathan also replied, "You deserve it, Gabriella, and much more." But the message that touched Gabriella the most was from Ethan. Jennifer had taken his phone to write, "Auntie Gabby, you are the best in the world. I love you infinity." Gabriella smiled, put away her phone, and looked around one more time. Yes, the last year had been difficult. There had been pain, humiliation, tears, but there had also been growth, change, redemption. And now, looking at everything she had achieved, Gabriella knew that every difficult moment had been worth it, because it had led her there, to a place where she could make a difference in the lives of dozens of children, to a position of respect and responsibility, and to a family that, although not perfect, was full of love. That night, Gabriella dreamed of the future, of all the children she would help at the daycare. With Ethan growing up and becoming a good man, with the possibility that sometimes stories that begin with sadness can end with hope. And that was exactly what was happening. A story of hope, of second chances, of love that overcomes pride, of dignity that isn't lost, of family built not just by blood, but by choice, by dedication, by heart. The following months brought new challenges. Coordinating the daycare was more complex than Gabriella had imagined. There were bureaucratic matters, meetings with parents, educational planning, staff management. It was a lot of responsibility, but she wasn't alone. Mrs. Gladys, even retired, was always available for advice. And surprisingly, Jonathan offered help with the administrative and financial part. "I know how to handle numbers, planning, management," he offered. "I can help you with that if you want." Gabriella accepted the help, and she discovered that Jonathan was really good at it. He set up spreadsheets, organized the cash flow, created systems that made administration easier, and he did it all voluntarily, without asking for anything in return. "Why are you doing this?" Gabriella asked one day. "Because I can, and because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. It was further proof that he had truly changed. He wasn't perfect, he still had moments of arrogance, but he was genuinely trying to be better. Ethan was getting ready to start real school. He had passed the selection process for a good private school. It was exciting but also scary for him. "What if the other kids don't like me?" he asked Gabriella one day. "They will like you, you're an amazing boy," she assured him. "But what if I don't know how to do something?" he insisted. "Then you learn, that's what school is for, to learn," she explained. "No one knows everything when they start school." "Will Auntie be there?" he asked, vulnerable. "Not at school, my love. But I'll be waiting for you when you get back," she promised. The first day of school was emotional for the whole family. Jennifer took the day off to take Ethan. Jonathan arrived late to work to be present. And Gabriella, even though she had to go to the daycare, stopped by the school first to give him a good luck kiss. Ethan was nervous, but excited. He entered the classroom holding the teacher's hand, looked back one last time to make sure everyone was there, and waved. "He'll be fine," Gabriella said to Jennifer, who was crying. "I know, but it's hard to see him growing up," Jennifer admitted. "It is. But it's also beautiful," Gabriella replied. The first months of school were an adjustment period. Ethan made little friends, started learning more, developing independence, and the family's routine adjusted to the new reality. At the daycare, Gabriella was implementing new programs, One was a kind of mentorship, where older children helped the younger ones. Another was an art project, where children could explore different materials and techniques. The changes were yielding results. The children were more engaged, the parents more satisfied. The daycare, which already had a good reputation in the community, was becoming a reference. One day Rebecca showed up at the daycare with a proposal. "Gabriella, I want to do a series of reports about the work you're doing here," she said. "I don't know," Gabriella hesitated. "I don't want to draw attention to myself." "It's not about you. It's about the work," Rebecca explained. "About how quality early childhood education can change lives. About how it's possible to make a difference even with limited resources. About the power of love and dedication." "Let me think about it," Gabriella requested. She consulted Mrs. Gladys, who encouraged her. "My daughter, if this story can help other daycares, other caregivers, other children, you have a moral obligation to do it," she said. Gabriella agreed. Rebecca spent weeks at the daycare, observing, talking to parents, children, and staff. The result was a series of 5 in-depth stories about community early childhood education, using Sunshine Daycare as an example. The stories reached a wide audience. Other daycares contacted her asking for advice. Business owners offered help for similar projects. Even the city government sent a team to learn about the work and see if it could be replicated in other areas. Gabriella was surprised by all the attention. "I'm just doing my job," she said. "That's exactly why it's special," Rebecca replied. "Because to you it's just work. But for the children and families it's life." During one of the visits to the Miller home, Gabriella found Ethan making a drawing. It was of him with 3 women, Jennifer, Gabriella, and Mrs. Gladys. "Who are they?" Gabriella asked. "My 3 mothers," Ethan replied naturally. The answer could have caused discomfort, but it didn't. Jennifer, who overheard, smiled. "He's right, in a way," she said. "Each of us cares for him in a different way, and all are important." It was a demonstration of how far that family had come, from a place of insecurity and competition to a place of acceptance and gratitude. Mrs. Margaret, the neighbor who witnessed everything, was compiling a special photo album. It had pictures from the entire journey, from the first hose bath that started it all to the current moments of harmony. It was a visual documentation of a family's transformation. One day, she called everyone, Gabriella, Jennifer, Jonathan, and Ethan, to her house. "I want to give this to you," she said, handing over the album. "Mrs. Margaret, this is—" Jennifer began, moved. "It's your story," Mrs. Margaret finished. "And it's a beautiful story. It started with pain, but look where you've arrived. I want you to never forget the journey, because it was the journey that transformed you." Ethan flipped through the album curiously. "Look, it's me as a baby," he exclaimed, "and Auntie Gabby was there too." "I've always been," Gabriella said, stroking his hair. "And always will be," Jonathan added. It was a promise, and everyone knew it would be kept. The years went by. Ethan grew up, continued in school, developed new interests. He discovered he loved sports, especially soccer. Jonathan became the volunteer coach for the youth team where Ethan played, something he never imagined doing. The daycare kept growing. Gabriella implemented new programs, expanded services, trained new caregivers. That small community project was becoming a respected institution. Jennifer excelled at work, but never again let her career consume her life. She had learned to balance, to prioritize, to be present, and she was building a relationship with Ethan that, although it started late, was strong and genuine. And Gabriella had found her place in the world. It wasn't what she had imagined when she started as a babysitter so many years ago. It was better. It was more meaningful. It was hers. One evening, sitting in her small apartment that she managed to rent with her new coordinator salary, Gabriella reflected on everything. She picked up the album Mrs. Margaret had given her and slowly turned the pages. Each photo told a story of pain and redemption, of pride and humility, of loss and discovery, and above all of love. Love that overcomes social barriers, love that forgives mistakes, love that transforms. Her phone rang. It was Ethan, who was now 7 years old and already knew how to use the phone. "Auntie Gabby, can I go to the daycare with you tomorrow?" he asked. "Of course, my love, but why?" "Because I want to help. I want to play with the little kids, like you do," he explained. "You want to be a volunteer?" Gabriella asked, surprised and proud. "I do. You always say helping others is important, so I want to help too," he replied. Gabriella felt her heart overflowing with pride. That boy she had helped raise was becoming someone special, someone who understood the importance of caring for others, someone who had learned through his own experience the value of compassion. "Then tomorrow you come with me," she agreed. "I'll introduce you to all the children." "Cool. See you tomorrow, Auntie Gabby. Love you." "Love you too, sweetheart." After hanging up, Gabriella kept looking at the phone. She thought about everything she had gone through to get here, the tears, the humiliation, the pain, but also the strength she discovered in herself, the ability to forgive without forgetting, the wisdom to set boundaries and maintain dignity, the courage to give second chances when deserved. And she thought about the future, about all the children she would still help, about Ethan continuing to grow and develop, about Jennifer and Jonathan continuing their journey to become better parents, about all the moments yet to come. Life hadn't been easy, but it had been rich, it had been meaningful, and it would continue to be. Because Gabriella had learned the most important lesson of all, that true love isn't limited by prejudices, by social status, by rigid definitions of family. True love is built, day after day, choice after choice, act after act. And she had plenty of love to give. To Ethan, to the children at the daycare, to everyone who crossed her path needing care, attention, someone who saw in them what they were, precious people worthy of love. The next day, when she arrived at the daycare with Ethan by her side, Gabriella opened the door and was greeted by the sound of children laughing, playing, living. And she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. This was her life. This was her story. And it was a beautiful story, even though it had started with so much pain. Maybe even especially because it had started with pain, because the pain had been transformative. It had created change, growth, evolution, and while watching Ethan playing with the younger children, with the same patience and affection she had always had, Gabriella knew that her legacy would continue. It would pass from generation to generation, the legacy of love, of care, of seeing value in every child, regardless of their background. It was more than she could have asked for. It was everything she needed. And it was only the beginning. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story. Do you think Gabriella made the right choice by returning to the Miller family? How did this story touch you? Leave your comment with your sincere reflections on this journey of overcoming and love. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one. Your participation means a lot to us.